Lily.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Jeremy Parvin here. As you know, I've created a passive income stream of over $50,000 a month in rental property income. My current portfolio is worth over $6.5 million. I've done all this while working a full-time job, and on my channel, I'm going to teach you how you can do it too. A couple of months ago, I did a video on free rent through June. Well, here it is June now, and so I wanted to do an update on this. What's going to happen at the end of the month when this national moratorium gets lifted? There are approximately 1.55 million people facing evictions, or about twice as many people facing evictions than who had their homes lost in the foreclosure crisis. What about all the $50 billion from the CARES Act that was supposed to go to tenants and landlords? Did they get the money? Did they pay for their rent?
Thank you for helping us hit 9,000 views since our last video last week. Thank you for the 451 subscribers. Each time you hit the like, comment, share, subscribe, or notification button, you will be entered to win a pair of AirPod Pros that Lily is giving away to one of our first 1,000 subscribers. I do post weekly, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you will know when we post our next video. So just a quick recap, back in September of 2020, the CDC issued a eviction moratorium. It went into effect in September of 2020. It was extended through the end of December, and then that was extended again through June 30th. Okay, let's check out this clip.
A pandemic-related ban on evictions has been overturned. A federal judge ruled the CDC's national moratorium exceeds the agency's authority. The decision is certainly a victory for landlords who say they can't afford to continue housing people for free. The ruling could potentially affect millions of struggling Americans. A recent survey showed that about 18% of renters are not able to keep up with their payments. That's about 10 million Americans.
Those estimates vary a lot, but that's a lot. It just seems crazy that the federal government thinks that they can just tell landlords to give away their products for free to the tenants without providing them with any compensation. It's fine if they want to do that, but they just need to pay for it. It'd be like if they told grocery stores, every store at the mall, car dealerships, wherever you work, for example, to give away your products for free, and that someday maybe the people will still owe you money and you two can figure out how to get that money later. Obviously that wouldn't work. The whole economy would collapse, every business would close, and it would be chaos. But that's what's happening to landlords right now. Here's another video for you.
So a Trump-appointed federal judge just nixed the federal eviction ban. We can throw this up on the screen. They vacated the CDC's eviction moratorium. Okay, so a few things to know here. First of all, we don't know exactly what the ramifications of this will be, whether it's going to end the eviction moratorium and allow landlords to start kicking people out again. That's number one. So we have to see how this decision is applied, because there have been some previous court decisions that went against eviction moratoriums, but they've been applied only in that specific instance. Right. So that's number one, is we don't know yet how broad the impact will actually be. Number two, the eviction moratorium was set to expire on June 30th. So it was coming at us very quickly, and part of the problem that we've been looking at here on this show is, while the Biden administration has passed some rent relief so that people could hopefully get current before that moratorium ends, even though it seems like an insufficient amount to me to start with, I think it's $50 billion, that's been distributed to states and cities, and almost none of it has gone out the door. So you have people who...
Did you catch that, right? All those relief funds that have been provided through the stimulus package has gone to the states, and very little, if any, has been given to the renters or to the landlords. And I get that it's hard to figure that stuff out, but check this out. There's an expiration date by which the states have to use the money or return it back to the federal government, and that's coming up.
Who have gotten behind on their rent over the course of a year.
Yes.
Potentially millions of people. So this is a very scary situation that we're facing right now, where, yeah, there might be some aid coming, although again, I'm worried that that aid is insufficient or people won't know how to access those programs, but almost none of it has gone out the door here. It's a really bad situation.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing, people need to understand the ramifications. So according to the White House, and this could be on the low end, this is approximately 1.55 million people fewer evictions. So that's a lot of people. I mean, in terms of who are facing, housing, not just insecurity, but would be outright evicted. And then how many millions are in the gray space of maybe 1 month away from falling behind, or extremely high in debt, payday loan, etc. And you can actually see that one of the things that's most important here is, first of all, the DOJ is going to appeal the ruling, but nobody still yet has their idea, like hands around what are we going to do here. It's been a problem since the very beginning terms of like, are we going to give them forbearance? Are we going to just pay it? Like what exactly is going to happen? And I don't even want to one of the things I think is so unfair is that some of the landlords are having to battle this because they're not getting any incoming money. And some of these even include small-time landlords. The government should just pay it. Like I don't see how you could possibly have a situation. You can't pit people against each other this way. Like the landlords versus, I'm not talking about BlackRock, okay? I'm talking about like somebody who owns like a rental property, obviously still upper middle class, but we should not have scenarios and situations like this because otherwise what will happen? The payment won't happen, the small landlord will have to sell, and BlackRock will buy it, or Blackstone, or whomever, and then they will just...
So BlackRock is just a huge private equity firm that owns over $8 trillion in properties, and they're buying up properties all across America.
They have endless money. They don't really care as much about the eviction moratorium. So that's what I'm the most worried about.
The Washington Post had a really good story about this, where they interviewed both the landlord, small-time guys, an immigrant. Actually, the town that he lived in had this program specifically targeted at immigrants to try to get them to be landlords. He owns a couple of properties, and he's basically hosed. I mean, he's really in debt. He's struggling to pay his own bills. So he's in a really bad situation. And then they also interviewed the tenant. So you got both sides of the equation. The tenant's like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't have $10,000 to give this guy at this point. Are you crazy? I have no option here. So, of course, I'm going to take advantage of this program and the forbearance as long as I possibly can. So, the government, by having the moratorium but not providing the support on the other side of that and not doing an effective job of getting that out, has really set up a disastrous situation all around. And look, my sympathy for landlords is going to be very limited in general. But some of these people, they're not particularly wealthy. No. It's not their fault that they end up in this situation. And they're getting hurt by this as well. It really is dramatically unfair. Of course, the corporate entities, they're going to make out no matter what happens here. So
they'll be fine.
They're going to be perfectly fine. So this is a potentially really dangerous situation. And even if this particular decision doesn't end up being applied on a wide-scale basis, this moratorium is coming to an end in a very short amount of time. Very little money has gone out in terms of rent relief. You have maybe millions of people who are behind. That is a huge crisis.
So end of June here is when this moratorium is ending.
In and of itself.
We cannot have a situation where small to medium time landowners get hosed and have to sell to corporate people, because that's what's going to happen. Is that if we don't bail out if we don't bail out the renters and therefore the owners, we talked about this a lot in the early days of the pandemic, which is that financial problems cascade up, and that you'll have the little guy who can't pay his problems, and then that goes to scale, and then what happens? Commercial real estate goes bust. But what always happens is that commercial real estate gets bailed out, everybody else totally screwed. No, you bail out at the bottom, the money will still flow up. That's how our economy works, and that's what we need to do in the same situation.
The eviction moratorium was 100% the right thing to do. The problem was that you didn't have any path to ending the eviction moratorium and getting people back on track. And so, now you're in a really, really bad situation for a lot of people.
That's right.
So I mentioned that New York was extending their moratorium through September the 30th. Check out what's going on in New York.
That these landlords are needing to make money from the rent to support the foundation of this housing industry.
So if we want to maintain any stability in our society right now, we have to give people the opportunity to stay in place.
Mounting rent debt and the threat of mass evictions are now one of the most pressing equity issues facing a post-pandemic America. Right now, an estimated 8.8 million Americans are behind on their rent, owing an average of $5,850. We want to give you some context on this issue, first by telling you how we got to this point. It was back in March of 2020 when Governor Cuomo announced a moratorium on residential and commercial evictions. Then, earlier this month, the governor signed an extension for the COVID-19 Emergency Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Act, meaning those who couldn't meet their rent requirements could not be evicted. And while these relief efforts have delayed a potential wave of evictions, rent is still going to be due. Here in New York, the current moratorium is set to expire on August 31st, unless another extension is granted. Tonight, Ali Tui is taking an in-depth look, examining the rent moratorium from all angles, while exploring its potential impact on the future rental market.
So that's been extended through September 30th.
And why the state appears to be at a standstill on billions in bailout funding.
By now, you've probably seen this. A landlord owed thousands in rent from his tenants, choosing to tell the world by spray painting it on the roof of this apartment building in Lancaster. It's a recent and extreme example of a common and complicated situation stemming from the state's eviction moratorium, according to John Washington. eviction.
Yes, we're seeing a lot of folks who need to be protected by the eviction moratorium.
Washington is a tenants' rights advocate for People's Action, a national nonprofit working to improve the lives of the poor and working class in a variety of ways, including housing issues.
I just think this is a moment where we really need some.
And in the lower end market, it's been a lot worse. My houses are in the median price range, most of them, and those folks have credit scores and their jobs aren't as affected as much. In the middle market where I am, I'm very fortunate that my tenants are paying well.
Empathy.
Washington says many tenants don't qualify for unemployment and still don't have a source of income.
While certain parts of the economy are coming back into some function, a lot of people are still out of work.
Which is why he thinks the eviction moratorium is necessary.
People can't just go work an extra year at a job to make up for. So if we want to maintain any stability in our society right now, we have to give people the opportunity to stay in place.
The landlord is just being asked too much at this point.
Jamie Michelle Kane is a real estate attorney who's against the
Totally
moratorium.
We don't see people going to Wegmans and stealing food off the shelves and having that be okay.
She's also the
Exactly.
Under One Roof Coalition leader, a statewide advocacy group aimed at protecting the rights of both landlords and tenants. How do you think the eviction moratorium is impacting landlords?
Frankly, it's getting them out of the industry. As a lawyer who practices, I see more contracts for sale coming across my desk for multifamily than ever before.
She thinks the moratorium is doing more harm than good.
These landlords are needing to make money from the rent to support the foundation of this housing industry.
New York State Senate Minority Leader Robert Ort is among those who voted against the moratorium extension.
You're going to have potentially tenants walking away, never paying rent that is owed. You're going to have landlords who are left holding the bag. They may walk away or file bankruptcy.
Some economic forecasters believe the state's policy could backfire and even hurt tenants in the long run due to landlords losing properties because of foreclosure, bankruptcy, or they may simply stop renting altogether. Experts say this could shrink the rental supply, driving up prices and ultimately making it more difficult for tenants to find homes. But
That's so true, and people would much rather live in a privately owned house than a Section 8 house in that lower end market.
all of the sources for this story tell me there is another solution aside from the moratorium. In December, the state was given more than $2 billion in federal CARES Act funding for rental assistance. And just this week, the state announced the funds would be available in June, meaning the state had the money
Yeah, listen to this part. This is crazy.
for more than 6 months, but it wasn't being made available to those in need. Whose fault is that?
I mean, at this point, it really has to lay with the governor and his executive agency.
The state is in its own way. There's rental assistance money, there's federal rental assistance money, and instead of getting it out to people as fast as possible, they're trying to figure out who deserves it.
It's at the mercy of the governor to open this portal up, and we're still waiting.
The money has a September 30th deadline. If
Catch this. If they don't use it, they're going to lose
New
it.
York doesn't use at least 65% of those funds, it gets returned to the federal government.
Fascinating, Ali. At the governor's office,
You know, why not contact the landlords who's got some past due balances? They're probably a little more organized and fewer of them than all the tenants, and then hold those landlords accountable to penalties and things like that if they are found to falsify information, right?
being blamed for the rental assistance delay. So what's the governor's office saying?
Right, well, despite everybody we spoke to saying that this does fall at the governor's feet, his press office actually referred us to the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. So we didn't hear from the governor about what took so long to roll out these funds. Meantime, applications are being accepted beginning June 1st for that emergency rental assistance program. Households that are approved may receive up to 12 months in back rent.
Crazy stuff, right? I wanted to show you what's going on in Texas. Texas has always been kind of another place, you know, and so they have not been cooperating with this with this eviction ban, just to kind of show you how backlogged they are and the record number of evictions going on there. I'll show you just a couple of 2 minutes off this guy's clip.
Now, a growing concern for millions of Americans right now is the eviction moratorium, which is set to end in just a little bit over a month now here at the end of June. In fact, about $53 billion are owed to landlords as part of this basically eviction moratorium, where landlords were not allowed to evict people, at least in most states. As you can see here, the Texas Supreme Court actually removed their eviction moratorium on March 31st. The Dallas-Fort Worth area has the third most eviction filings in the country, June 30th, which is when the eviction moratorium is set to expire. Now, a couple different things could happen is, number one, they could extend this through a presidential executive order. They also could extend this through the next stimulus package or the next physical infrastructure package, the American Families Plan. They also could let it lapse And the other thing they could do is they could actually pay for the past owed money through a stimulus check program, the American Families Plan, or even the Physical Infrastructure Plan. That does kind of fit with infrastructure. We're talking about buildings and rent and stuff like that. $53 billion could easily be slipped into the Physical Infrastructure Package or the past stimulus package. This would actually help out A, renters get caught up, and B, would help out the landlords, which a lot of them are mom and pops, average everyday people that maybe took out a loan for 1 or 2 rental properties, and they might charge $1,000 a month rent for a round number, but their mortgage is $800 a month rent. So they don't make a lot of profit on a monthly basis. They do kind of get some appreciation over time of their property, depending on where the property is. But this pandemic has really hurt both the landowners or the landlords, in addition to the renters. We could see something like this in the next stimulus package or the next physical infrastructure package. In the last stimulus package, we did see almost $50 billion for mortgage assistance, rental assistance, and utility assistance.
I want to say there are actually more mom and pop small guys as landlords than there are the big guys.
Other types of assistance.
So to say that they couldn't do $53 billion to catch up all this past owed money for renters and landlords is something they could do in the next stimulus package. Now, the other thing that Republicans...
So that's all I wanted to show you on that one. So in the last clip, I want to show you what's going on in Tennessee, which is my home state. Now, this is Memphis, so on the other side of the state, 6 hours or more from here. Memphis is the city where the federal judge overruled the CDC's eviction moratorium, say it was out of their control. So Memphis might be what it's going to look like across the country when the eviction ban is lifted at the end of this month. Memphis is the largest city not complying with the CDC eviction ban. They're working through their evictions. They've got over 10,000 eviction cases on the books, and they're working through those. So take a listen to this.
Several states are pushing back against the CDC's COVID-19 eviction moratorium order, leaving thousands without homes. Last month, the CDC extended its order to June 30th. It postpones rent payments for tenants. The moratorium also prevents landlords from being able to evict tenants for delayed payments. In states like Tennessee, tenants are being evicted at alarming rates. In 2019, the eviction rate was double the national average. That number skyrocketed during the coronavirus pandemic. Recent court decisions are leaving tenants with no protection against evictions and substantial bills for back pay on rent. Experts say cities like Memphis could be a warning for what comes after the moratorium expires. Joining me now for more on this is CBS News Money Watch reporter Irina Ivanova. Irina, welcome. Great to see you. How is the moratorium order playing out in the courts? And how is it specifically affecting renters in Memphis when most places around the country are still under an eviction moratorium?
That's right. So there have been many lawsuits filed challenging the CDC's order, and different courts around the country have reached different decisions. There have been at least 2 federal courts that have sided with the CDC, and at least 3 others that have struck it down. Now, the most significant, according to housing advocates, is a decision in the Western District of Tennessee, which includes the city of Memphis. That court found late last month that the CDC basically exceeded its authority when making the order, and that the eviction protection was unenforceable. Now, the federal government is appealing that decision, which means it could be reversed. But in the meantime, the CDC's ruling is not enforced. And housing advocates in Memphis believe it's the largest city in the U.S. without the CDC order. Of course, while the order was in place, eviction cases have been piling up. The order prevented tenants from being removed from their homes physically, but it didn't do anything to stop the filing of evictions. I saw one report that found that the county containing Memphis entered this year with a backlog of 10,000 eviction cases, and they are now coming to a head.
And so, we can't...
I want to skip here and show you a chart. Percent of households behind on their rent as of January, right? So we're a few months beyond that. More than 19% are the red states, including the state I'm in. I'm actually about right here, Georgia and Tennessee. I hope you liked some of those clips. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. It seems to be very quiet right now. We'll all be waiting to see what happens. Will the CDC extend their moratorium? Will there be an executive order extending it? Will the next stimulus plan cover this? Will landlords and tenants actually get the stimulus money that's already been given in the previous stimulus packages? I guess we'll find out. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen. And Lily just wanted to thank everyone for hitting the like button and helping us grow our subscriber base. Thanks, and until next time, I hope you have a great week.
Although I'm a licensed CPA and have 3 business degrees, I'm just a guy on YouTube with my dog. So be sure to consult with your professionals before making any investment decisions. Thank you, and until next week.
Lily.